It's official. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex's royal standing is over, forever. In a move that has sent shockwaves across the globe, King Charles has made a final, irreversible decision, revoking the royal titles of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. A royal decree that strips them of their titles, forbidding them from ever using any royal styling, not just in the UK, but internationally. Why did King Charles take this dramatic step, and what does this mean for the future of the Sussexes and their place in the royal family? Stay tuned as we delve into the high-stakes drama that has ended the royal reign of Harry and Meghan, forever altering their path and the monarchy's legacy. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The news hit like a thunderclap, reverberating through the walls of Buckingham Palace and echoing across the Atlantic. For months, speculation had brewed about the final move King Charles would make regarding the royal titles of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Now, the waiting is over. In an unprecedented and powerful display of authority, King Charles has issued a royal decree that strips the Sussexes of their royal standing, forbidding them from using any regal styling in the UK or abroad. The announcement is nothing short of monumental. For the first time in modern royal history, a monarch has decisively ended the formal royal status of a son and daughter-in-law, a move laden with both symbolism and legal implications. The decree, signed and sealed by the king himself, signals the end of an era and the beginning of a new, more assertive reign. But how did it come to this? What drove King Charles to make such a bold, final decision? And most importantly, what does this mean for Harry and Meghan, both in the United Kingdom and in their adopted home of California? To understand the gravity of this royal bombshell, we need to trace the steps that led to this historic decree. It's a story that stretches back years, long before Harry and Meghan's public departure from royal life, before the Netflix series, before the explosive interviews. It's a tale woven with threads of loyalty, betrayal, tradition, and modernity. At its core lies a fundamental question: can a royal family truly modernize without unraveling itself? When King Charles ascended the throne, the British public knew they were in for a change. As the longest-serving Prince of Wales, he had spent decades preparing for this role, shaping his vision for a more streamlined, practical monarchy. Yet, even as he stepped into this new role, one issue continued to cast a long shadow over his reign: the Sussex question. Since stepping back from royal duties in 2020, Harry and Meghan's actions had consistently sparked controversy and divided public opinion. From their tell-all interviews to their outspoken criticism of the royal institution itself, the couple's choices seemed increasingly at odds with the values of the monarchy. To some, they were brave, breaking free from an outdated system to find their own voice. To others, they were seen as renegades, exploiting royal connections while criticizing the very institution that had once nurtured them. The tension reached a fever pitch when Harry's memoir dropped, containing explosive claims about his upbringing, his relationship with his father, and the internal struggles he faced as a royal. To those who followed the monarchy closely, it seemed almost inevitable that King Charles would have to take a stand. Still, few expected it to be so definitive and absolute. The decision to revoke the Sussex titles was not taken lightly. It is said that the king spent weeks consulting with advisors, weighing the potential fallout. At stake was not just his relationship with his son, but the integrity of the monarchy itself. For many, the Sussex saga had become a symbol of the growing divide between tradition and modernity within the royal family. Could the monarchy maintain its dignity while allowing one of its own to openly challenge and critique it on a global stage? In the end, King Charles made his decision, and it was a decisive one. The royal decree leaves no room for interpretation. Harry and Meghan are no longer permitted to use their Duke and Duchess of Sussex titles. This ban applies not just within the United Kingdom but also abroad, effectively erasing the last vestiges of their formal royal identity. The implications of this are profound. Without their titles, Harry and Meghan are no longer seen as representatives of the British monarchy, cutting the final thread that once tied them to the institution. Public reaction has been swift and polarized. In the UK, many royalists praised King Charles for finally taking a stand, asserting that the monarchy's reputation could not be allowed to suffer any longer. On social media, hashtags like #RoyalDecree and #Sussex titles revoked began trending within minutes, with heated debates erupting over whether the decision was fair or vindictive. In contrast, American audiences, particularly in the circles that support Harry and Meghan, expressed shock and outrage, viewing the move as punitive and unnecessary. The Sussexes, for their part, have remained silent. There has been no official statement from their spokesperson, and the couple has not appeared in public since the decree was made. Speculation is rife about how they will respond. Will they challenge the decision legally, seeking to restore their titles through court action? Or will they accept the outcome, choosing to further distance themselves from royal protocol and continue building their independent brand in the United States? As the dust settles, many questions remain. Is this the definitive end of the Sussex saga, or merely the beginning of a new chapter? For King Charles, the decree represents a bold assertion of his authority and a message to the world that the monarchy will not be undermined, even by those within it. Yet, for Harry and Meghan, it is a personal and professional blow, one that challenges their identity and their future in the public eye. The decision to revoke the Sussex titles also raises broader questions about the future of the British monarchy. King Charles has long been a proponent of a slimmed-down, more focused royal family. By decisively cutting ties with Harry and Meghan, is he setting a precedent for how the institution will handle dissent and controversy going forward? Or is this a one-off decision aimed solely at curbing the damage done by a particularly vocal pair of former royals? As we delve deeper into this story, we will explore the reactions from royal insiders, the political implications, and the personal toll this decision is likely to have on both sides of the Atlantic. We will also take a closer look at the royal decree itself, its wording, its intent, and its potential loopholes. Is this truly the final nail in the coffin for Harry and Meghan's royal connections, or will they find a way to challenge it? Stay with us as we break down the biggest royal story of the year, dissect the motivations behind King Charles's decision, and speculate on what the future holds for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, now officially just Harry and Meghan. When Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were first granted the titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex, it was seen as a fresh beginning, a symbol of modernity within the walls of an ancient institution. The wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle in May 2018 captivated millions around the globe. It wasn't just a union of two people, it was a merging of worlds. Harry, the younger son of the late Princess Diana and King Charles, represented a legacy of royalty steeped in tradition. Meghan, a biracial American actress, symbolized progress and a step toward inclusivity. Together, they were viewed as the face of a new, more inclusive monarchy, one that seemed ready to bridge the gap between tradition and modernity. The title of Duke and Duchess of Sussex was conferred upon them by Queen Elizabeth II as a wedding gift, a symbolic gesture that linked them to the prestigious history of the Sussex name. It was a significant title, last used in the 19th century, symbolizing both responsibility and privilege. The title came with its own expectations, public duties, charity work, and a commitment to uphold the values of the crown. For a time, it seemed like Harry and Meghan were ready to take on the challenge. Their first public engagements as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were met with widespread acclaim. Crowds gathered by the thousands to catch a glimpse of the newlyweds as they visited charities, attended diplomatic events, and championed social causes. In those early days, the pair seemed unstoppable. Their appearances were polished, their speeches well received, and their presence felt like a breath of fresh air within the often rigid structure of the royal family. Meghan's influence was seen as a modernizing force, with her focus on issues like gender equality, mental health, and social justice. Together, they launched the Sussex Royal Foundation, a charitable initiative aimed at addressing global issues such as climate change and mental health awareness. However, beneath the surface, cracks were beginning to form. Rumors of discord between Harry and his brother William began to seep into the media. Stories of tensions between Meghan and members of the royal household also began to emerge. Reports suggested that Meghan's approach to royal life clashed with tradition, and her outspoken nature was seen as disruptive by some within the palace walls. Behind the grandeur of public appearances, there were whispers of disagreements, misunderstandings, and cultural clashes that seemed to widen the divide. The press began to turn. What had once been glowing coverage shifted towards criticism. Meghan, in particular, became the focal point of media scrutiny, with tabloids dissecting her every move. Headlines speculated about her relationship with Kate Middleton, her influence over Harry, and her willingness to adapt to royal protocol. The British press, notorious for its relentless coverage of royal affairs, seemed to target Meghan in a way that many felt was disproportionate and, at times, racially charged. Harry, familiar with the brutality of the press from his mother's experience, grew increasingly frustrated. he began to speak out against what he saw as unfair and intrusive reporting. Meghan, too, voiced her struggles during a televised interview, where she admitted that life within the royal family had been challenging. For many, it was the first sign that the fairy tale was cracking. The couple's decision to sue major British tabloids marked a turning point. It was unprecedented for members of the royal family to take such direct action against the press, and it signaled a new chapter in the Sussexes' relationship with the media and the monarchy. Despite the growing tensions, the couple continued to engage in royal duties. Their tour of South Africa was a massive success, with Harry and Meghan both delivering powerful speeches on issues of equality and justice. However, even amidst the success of the tour, it became clear that tensions were still simmering beneath the surface. In a candid interview during the tour, Harry admitted that he and his brother William were on different paths, and Meghan tearfully spoke about the pressures of royal life. The interview was raw and unfiltered, a stark contrast to the traditionally composed image of the royal family. It marked a turning point, not just for the Sussexes but for the monarchy as a whole. For the first time, the public saw the human cost of royal duty in real time. Meghan's revelation that she was struggling and that few within the royal institution had reached out to offer support was a bombshell. Harry's acknowledgement of tension with his brother only added fuel to the media fire. Speculation about their future began to intensify, with many questioning how long the couple could continue under the strain of royal expectations and media scrutiny. The climax came in January 2020 when Harry and Meghan announced their decision to step back from their roles as senior members of the royal family. The news sent shockwaves across the world. Their statement, posted on social media, revealed their intention to become financially independent while continuing to support the Queen. However, the announcement, reportedly made without the full consultation of the royal family, sparked a crisis within the monarchy. The media dubbed it Megxit, a term that would forever symbolize their departure from royal life. Negotiations followed. Behind the closed doors of Sandringham Estate, the Queen, Prince Charles, Prince William, and Prince Harry met to discuss the terms of their exit. It was a historic gathering, one that would determine the future of Harry and Meghan's relationship with the monarchy. The outcome was a formal agreement that saw the couple stripped of their HRH, Her Royal Highness, titles, and their public funding. While they retained the titles of Duke and Duchess of Sussex, their roles within the monarchy were fundamentally altered. They would no longer represent the Queen, and their public appearances would be independent of royal endorsement. For some, it was seen as a reasonable compromise, a way for Harry and Meghan to find their own path while still maintaining a link to the royal family. For others, it marked the beginning of the end, a slow unraveling of royal connection that would culminate in the recent royal decree by King Charles. The departure from royal duties allowed the Sussexes to pursue commercial ventures, including multi-million-dollar deals with streaming platforms like Netflix and Spotify. Yet, as their independence grew, so did the distance between them and the crown. Over time, the title of Duke and Duchess of Sussex began to carry a different weight. No longer representatives of the monarchy, Harry and Meghan used their titles as branding tools, leveraging their royal connection in their public endeavors. This choice was met with criticism in the UK, where many felt that using the titles while living abroad and criticizing the monarchy was hypocritical. Their interviews, particularly the explosive sit-down with Oprah Winfrey, fueled further calls for the titles to be stripped entirely. The calls grew louder in the wake of Harry's memoir and their documentary series, which openly criticized the monarchy and its handling of press relations. As the tension mounted, King Charles's decision to revoke their titles seemed more inevitable than surprising. It was a move many had called for, and when it finally came, it was delivered with the full weight of royal authority. The royal decree not only stripped Harry and Meghan of their Sussex titles, but also forbade them from using any form of royal styling in both the UK and abroad. The rise and fall of the Sussex titles serve as a cautionary tale, a symbol of modernity clashing with tradition, of independence meeting the iron grip of monarchy. What began as a hopeful chapter in royal history has ended with a decisive and powerful move by King Charles to protect the institution's legacy and reaffirm its authority. For Harry and Meghan, the fall of the Sussex title marks the final severance from the royal institution that once embraced them. The departure of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle from the royal fold did not just represent a personal decision, it was a fracture that sent shockwaves through the entire institution of the British monarchy. For years, the relationship between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex and the rest of the royal family had been deteriorating, but the public rarely glimpsed the full extent of the discontent simmering beneath the surface. From whispered disagreements to public scandals, the tensions grew thicker with each passing year, culminating in a crisis that would ultimately redefine the monarchy itself. The first signs of tension began to surface shortly after Harry and Meghan's wedding. While the ceremony itself was a grand spectacle, watched by millions across the globe, insiders whispered that Meghan's adjustment to royal life was not as seamless as it appeared. Reports of disagreements with palace staff began to leak into the tabloids, suggesting that Meghan's expectations clashed with royal protocol. Some royal aides claimed that Meghan's approach was far more assertive than what they were accustomed to. Her American independence, while celebrated by some, was seen as disruptive by others. The British tabloids quickly latched onto these rumors, spinning tales of diva-like behavior and clashes with senior royals. Meghan, a self-made actress who had spent years navigating Hollywood, reportedly struggled with the rigid structures of royal expectations. She was accustomed to speaking her mind, engaging directly with the public, and controlling her own narrative. In contrast, the royal family operated with a strict code of silence, where tradition dictated that personal thoughts and political opinions were kept behind closed doors. At first, the rumors were brushed off as mere tabloid fodder. However, the whispers grew louder and more persistent. Stories of Meghan's alleged behavior towards palace staff, nicknamed Hurricane Meghan by some, began to fill the pages of British newspapers. There were tales of 5 a.m. emails, demands for quick turnarounds, and misunderstandings with royal aides. The palace, typically silent on matters of internal conflict, issued a rare statement defending Meghan, but the damage was already beginning to show. Royal insiders suggested that her approach, while efficient, clashed with the slower, more deliberate pace of palace life. The most significant strain, however, emerged between Harry and his brother, Prince William. For years, the two had been seen as inseparable, bonded by the tragedy of their mother's death and their shared responsibilities within the monarchy. But as Harry's relationship with Meghan deepened, so too did the apparent divide between the brothers. According to palace sources, William expressed concerns early on about the speed of Harry's relationship with Meghan. His caution, though well-meaning, was reportedly not well received. Harry, protective of Meghan and eager to begin his own family, saw his brother's caution as an affront. It was the first public glimpse into a rift that would only grow wider with time. The turning point came with the couple's decision to establish their own household, separate from Kensington Palace where William and Kate resided. While officially framed as a move to accommodate their growing family and distinct public roles, insiders speculated that the separation signaled deeper discord. The Sussexes moved their operations to Frogmore Cottage, a residence gifted to them by the Queen. The renovation costs, funded by British taxpayers, sparked outrage and only fueled the negative media narrative surrounding Meghan. Reports of clashes with staff, strained relationships with royal aides, and disagreements over royal duties continued to plague the couple's public image. The press scrutiny intensified with each passing month. Meghan's every move was dissected, from the way she held her baby bump to her choice of nail polish. Headlines criticized her perceived defiance of royal tradition, her political inclinations, and her approach to motherhood. For Harry, who had watched the press hound his mother, Princess Diana, to the brink of tragedy, the unrelenting criticism was intolerable. His public statement condemning the treatment of Meghan by the press was a rare, emotionally charged plea for privacy and respect. It was also a clear message to the palace that he would no longer remain silent while his. Inside the palace walls, the atmosphere was reportedly tense. Senior royals, accustomed to keeping their grievances private, were said to be displeased with Harry's decision to issue public statements without consulting the family. The Queen, ever the symbol of stoic silence, remained publicly unspoken on the matter, though insiders claimed she was deeply concerned about the growing fracture. Prince Charles attempted to mediate, but his efforts reportedly fell short as both sides grew more entrenched in their positions. The breaking point came with the couple's decision to step back from royal duties. Their announcement, posted on social media, blindsided the royal family. According to sources, neither the Queen nor Prince Charles was given advance notice of the statement. The shock was palpable. For centuries, the monarchy had operated on a foundation of unity and public duty. Harry and Meghan's decision to publicly declare their intentions to seek financial independence and relocate part-time to North America was seen as a betrayal of that tradition. Behind closed doors, crisis talks ensued. The Queen called an emergency meeting at Sandringham, bringing together senior members of the royal family to address the situation. Dubbed the Sandringham Summit, the meeting was a historic moment of reckoning. For hours, the family discussed the implications of Harry and Meghan's decision. Leaks from the meeting suggested that Harry was resolute in his decision, expressing frustration over the treatment of Meghan and their desire for autonomy. The Queen, known for her pragmatic approach, worked to find a compromise. The outcome was a formal agreement that allowed the couple to step back from official duties, relinquish their HRH titles, and repay the public funds used to renovate Frogmore Cottage. While the agreement provided a path forward, it did little to mend the fractures within the family. William and Harry's relationship grew more distant, with the brothers barely speaking. The Sussexes' relocation to North America further deepened the divide, with Meghan and Harry embracing a life outside the confines of royal protocol. Their new independence, marked by high-profile media deals and public speaking engagements, sparked further controversy. Critics accused them of capitalizing on their royal status while simultaneously criticizing the institution that granted them that privilege. Meanwhile, back in the UK, the royal family faced mounting pressure to act. Public sentiment began to shift, with many calling for the complete removal of Harry and Meghan's titles. Polls indicated a growing divide among royal watchers, with some expressing sympathy for the couple's desire for independence, while others felt that they were exploiting their titles for personal gain. The monarchy, already struggling to maintain relevance in a rapidly changing world, now found itself entangled in a very public family dispute. King Charles, in particular, faced a growing chorus of voices demanding action. His ascension to the throne brought with it expectations of reform and modernization. Many saw the Sussex situation as a test of his ability to lead decisively. For months, speculation swirled around what action, if any, the king would take to address the growing discontent. Calls for a more streamlined monarchy echoed through political and social circles, with some even suggesting that Harry and Meghan be stripped of their titles entirely. The discontent that had been simmering for years had finally reached a boiling point. What had started as whispers of tension had now grown into a full-blown royal crisis, one that would ultimately force King Charles to make a choice that would redefine the monarchy for years to come. The decision to strip Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their royal titles was not a spur-of-the-moment decree. It was the culmination of months of secret meetings, hushed conversations, and strategic planning within the very heart of Buckingham Palace. While the public witnessed the glossy surface of royal events and diplomatic engagements, behind the gilded doors of the palace, preparations were underway to execute one of the most significant royal decisions in recent history. It began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Following Harry and Meghan's public departure from royal duties and their subsequent media ventures, whispers began circulating among the senior members of the royal household. There were concerns that the Sussexes were leveraging their royal titles for commercial gain. High-profile deals with Netflix, Spotify, and public speaking engagements had transformed the Duke and Duchess of Sussex into global celebrities, unbound by the restrictions of palace protocol. To many within the royal institution, it felt like a breach of tradition, a violation of the unspoken agreement that titles carried a responsibility, not just privilege. King Charles, known for his methodical and deliberate approach, understood the weight of the decision he was about to make. Revoking royal titles was not a common practice. In fact, it was nearly unprecedented in modern times. The last major incident of such magnitude was during the abdication crisis of 1936 when King Edward VIII surrendered the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson. The gravity of what he was about to consider required not only careful planning but also the support of key figures within the monarchy. Thus began the series of secret meetings, held in the shadowy corridors of Buckingham Palace and Sandringham Estate. Attended only by the most senior members of the royal family and trusted advisors, these gatherings were marked by their strict confidentiality. Phones were confiscated at the door, and only handwritten notes were permitted, each one accounted for and locked away after each meeting. The agenda was clear: determine the future of Harry and Meghan's titles, and, by extension, their continued association with the monarchy. The Queen was reportedly present at many of these initial discussions. Though her health had begun to decline, her influence over royal matters remained unchallenged. Those in attendance noted her somber demeanor as she listened intently to the concerns raised by Prince William and other senior royals. William, in particular, voiced his frustrations. His relationship with Harry had deteriorated significantly, and he expressed concerns that the continued use of the Sussex titles overseas was not only undermining the monarchy but also disrespecting the family's legacy. Prince William's stance was supported by the royal advisors. Their argument was simple. Titles conferred by the crown were meant to represent the monarchy and uphold its values. By stepping back from royal duties and engaging in media projects that often criticize the institution, Harry and Meghan were, in their eyes, misusing their titles. The argument was further bolstered by polling data showing a decline in public support for the couple in the United Kingdom. Many Britons felt that if Harry and Meghan wished to live independently of royal expectations, they should also relinquish their titles. The meetings continued for months, evolving from mere discussions into strategic planning. Lawyers were consulted, historians brought in to provide context, and constitutional experts analyzed the implications of such a move. Unlike the political system, the monarchy operated under its own set of unwritten rules and traditions. Revoking titles required more than just the king's signature. It demanded a legal framework that could withstand scrutiny both domestically and abroad. Throughout these discussions, King Charles remained notably reserved. His decision to listen more than he spoke was a calculated move. By absorbing the perspectives of those around him, he was not only respecting tradition, but also building a consensus that would be crucial for what lay ahead. His patience, however, was not mistaken for indecision. Close aides revealed that behind closed doors, Charles was resolute. He believed that the monarchy needed to be safeguarded, its dignity preserved, and its values upheld. Allowing Harry and Meghan to retain their titles while openly criticizing the institution, in his view, was untenable. The final decision came after a particularly tense meeting at Sandringham. It was there, on a cold winter afternoon, that the senior royals gathered one last time to finalize the terms. King Charles, flanked by Prince William and Princess Anne, laid out the decree in no uncertain terms. Harry and Meghan would be stripped of their royal titles. The move was described as both symbolic and strategic, a way to protect the monarchy from further controversy, while signaling to the world that titles were not merely ceremonial. They carried weight, duty, and accountability. The decision was not made lightly. Reports suggest that King Charles spent hours after the meeting in quiet reflection, fully understanding the implications of his actions. For all intents and purposes, this was not just a family matter. It was a public declaration of the monarchy's intent to uphold its principles, even at the cost of familial bonds. Charles, who had long been seen as a progressive force within the royal family, was now taking a firm stand, one that would define the early years of his reign. Official documentation was prepared, and the royal decree was drafted with meticulous detail. Lawyers ensured that the language was ironclad, leaving no room for misinterpretation or legal challenge. It would not be enough to merely announce the decision. It had to be enforceable across borders, recognized by foreign governments, and respected by international organizations. Harry and Meghan, despite living in the United States, would not be permitted to use their royal titles in any official capacity. Furthermore, their charitable organizations and public appearances would be restricted from using their former styling as Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The final step was execution. In a private ceremony within the halls of Buckingham Palace, King Charles signed the decree, flanked by senior members of the royal family and legal advisors. The pen strokes were deliberate, each line a mark of finality. With his signature, the fate of Harry and Meghan's royal standing was sealed. The document, bearing the royal seal, was sent to the Privy Council for official registration, marking the formal end of their association with the royal family. The news, however, was kept under wraps. For weeks, the palace maintained its silence, allowing the legal processes to unfold quietly. It was only after every last detail had been secured that Buckingham Palace made the official announcement. The press release was succinct, almost clinical in its wording. It stated that by decree of King Charles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex would no longer carry their titles in any formal capacity. The reaction was immediate. Headlines blazed across the globe, and social media platforms exploded with speculation, outrage, and support. Yet, within the walls of the palace, there was a sense of calm. The decision, long deliberated and meticulously executed, was now final. King Charles, despite the public frenzy, appeared resolute. He had made his choice, one that he believed was necessary to protect the legacy and dignity of the British monarchy. And with that, The secret meetings that had shaped this historic decision came to a close, their purpose fulfilled, their impact only beginning to be felt. The royal decree that stripped Prince Harry and Meghan Markle of their titles was more than a symbolic gesture. It was a powerful display of King Charles's authority and the enduring influence of the British monarchy. For centuries, the British crown has wielded its power through a combination of tradition and legal precedent. In this case, King Charles invoked a mechanism that had not been used in modern history, a royal decree with the explicit intent to revoke titles and redefine the boundaries of royal privilege. The significance of this decision reverberated not only within the walls of Buckingham Palace but across the globe, signaling that the monarchy, even in the 21st century, still held the ability to shape its destiny with decisive action. The drafting of the royal decree began in secrecy, shrouded in the kind of confidentiality that only the highest levels of monarchy could maintain. Legal experts were called upon to consult on its construction. The language of the decree needed to be precise, unambiguous, and ironclad against any potential legal challenges. The document itself would serve as a statement of the monarchy's expectations and the consequences of deviation from those expectations. It was not merely a revocation of titles. It was a statement that the institution would not tolerate actions that undermined its values or tarnished its reputation. The legal groundwork for the decree was rooted in centuries-old traditions. The royal prerogative, a body of customary authority vested in the sovereign, allowed King Charles to make decisions independent of Parliament. This ancient right, though rarely invoked in such a dramatic fashion, provided him with the necessary power to issue the decree without legislative approval. It was a stark reminder of the monarchy's autonomy and its unique position within the British constitutional framework. For months, the legal team worked closely with royal advisors, crafting the language that would be used to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles. The decree needed to be airtight, devoid of any loopholes that could be exploited. There were provisions written into the document that specifically forbade the Sussexes from using their former titles in any official capacity, both within the United Kingdom and internationally. This included the use of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex styling in charitable endeavors, public appearances, and commercial activities. In essence, it severed their formal connection to the monarchy, making their titles nothing more than historical relics. Behind the scenes, the royal family prepared for the announcement. Senior royals were briefed on the decision, and strategies were developed to handle the inevitable media fallout. Communications teams at Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, and Kensington Palace coordinated their messaging to present a unified front. It was imperative that the decision be seen as a necessary step to protect the integrity of the monarchy, not as a personal vendetta against Harry and Meghan. Statements were prepared, emphasizing that the decision, while difficult, was made in the best interest of the institution. The final signing of the decree was a private affair, held within the confines of Buckingham Palace. King Charles, accompanied by senior advisors and members of the Privy Council, took his place at a long, polished oak table. The decree lay before him, its pages meticulously crafted with the finest parchment and written in the formal language of royal edicts. At the head of the document was the royal crest, embossed in gold leaf, symbolizing the authority under which it was issued. King Charles read through the decree one final time, his face betraying no emotion as he scanned the words that would sever Harry and Meghan's formal ties to the monarchy. He paused momentarily, the room falling into a hush as the weight of the moment settled upon those in attendance. Then, with deliberate precision, he lifted the royal pen, an heirloom passed down from previous sovereigns, and signed his name with a flourish. The ink, rich and black, bled slightly into the parchment, marking the official end of the Sussex titles. The document was immediately sealed with the Great Seal of the realm, an act that conferred upon it the full force of royal law. The seal itself, heavy and ornate, was pressed into molten wax, leaving an imprint that signified its legitimacy. It was then handed to the Lord Chancellor, whose role it was to ensure that the decree was recorded in the archives of the Privy Council. With that, the decision became irreversible, a permanent mark upon the legacy of King Charles's reign. The announcement was handled with the same level of strategic precision that had marked the decree's drafting. A carefully worded statement was released to the media, timed perfectly to coincide with the evening news cycle. The wording was clinical and direct, outlining the key points of the decision without emotional flourish. It was clear and unyielding. Harry and Meghan were no longer to be addressed as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, nor would they be permitted to use their former titles in any official capacity. the reaction was immediate. Headlines blazed across the world, announcing the royal decree in bold letters. News outlets dissected every word of the statement, analyzing its implications for the monarchy and for the Sussexes themselves. Pundits speculated on what the move meant for the future of the royal family, with some praising King Charles for his decisive action and others lamenting the apparent finality of the decision. Social media platforms erupted in debate, with hashtags trending worldwide as users voiced their opinions. Supporters of the monarchy hailed the decision as a necessary step to preserve its integrity, while critics decried it as punitive and heavy-handed. The international community also took notice. In the United States, where Harry and Meghan had established their new life, commentators questioned what impact the loss of their titles would have on their commercial ventures and public engagements. Speculation mounted over whether their contracts with major media companies would be affected, given that much of their public persona had been tied to their royal status. Legal experts weighed in, suggesting that the decree, while dramatic, was perfectly within the rights of the sovereign, given the unique structure of the British monarchy. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood was reportedly one of resolution. King Charles, having executed his power with precision and finality, resumed his royal duties without further comment. Those within his inner circle noted his sense of calm, attributing it to the relief of having finally addressed a lingering controversy. For months, the issue of the Sussexes' titles had cast a shadow over his reign, a constant reminder of the unresolved conflict within his family. Now, with the stroke of a pen, that conflict had been managed, at least in the eyes of the institution. For Harry and Meghan, the decree represented a turning point. Their identities, long intertwined with royal heritage, had been reshaped by the hand of a father and a sovereign. The implications of this decision would stretch far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace, affecting not just their standing in the United Kingdom but their ventures abroad. It was a declaration of independence, not on their terms, but on the terms of the monarchy they had once served. The decree marked not just the end of their titles but the beginning of a new chapter, one defined by their own actions and unbound by the constraints of royal protocol. In a single moment, King Charles had reasserted his authority, demonstrating that while the modern world may change, the crown remains steadfast, wielding its power with the same force that had defined its legacy for centuries. The announcement of King Charles's royal decree sent shockwaves across the globe. In the United Kingdom, the reaction was immediate and fierce. News outlets scrambled to break the story, with headlines plastered across newspapers and television screens declaring the end of the Sussex titles. Political commentators, royal correspondents, and social analysts dissected the implications of the decision, debating its fairness, its legality, and its potential repercussions for the monarchy. Public opinion was sharply divided, with royalists praising the king's decisive action as a necessary measure to protect the integrity of the monarchy, while critics viewed it as a punitive and unnecessary act of alienation. In the streets of London, reactions ranged from quiet acceptance to outspoken approval. Many who supported the monarchy's traditions felt that King Charles had done what was needed to restore dignity to the royal institution. For years, the Sussexes' departure and subsequent media ventures had been a point of contention among British citizens, many of whom believed that Harry and Meghan had exploited their titles while criticizing the very institution that had granted them. Polls conducted in the aftermath of the announcement reflected this sentiment. A majority of Britons surveyed believed that the decision to revoke the titles was justified, citing concerns over the couple's perceived commercial exploitation of their royal connections. For others, however, the news was met with disappointment and sadness. Among those who had admired Harry for his military service and his charitable work, the decree felt like the final nail in the coffin of his royal legacy. To some, it represented a family feud that had spiraled out of control, ending with the severance of one of its most charismatic members. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small group of supporters gathered with signs expressing solidarity with Harry and Meghan, chanting slogans of support and waving banners that read, "We stand with Harry and monarchy for all, not just some." The gesture, while modest, symbolized the division that had been sown across the nation. In the United States, where Harry and Meghan had relocated to begin their independent lives, the response was markedly different. American media outlets, which had been largely sympathetic to the Sussexes, framed the royal decree as an act of retribution. Major networks ran segments questioning the timing of the decision, speculating on whether it was a reaction to the couple's high-profile media projects, including their Netflix series and Harry's memoir. Morning talk shows buzzed with debate, with many commentators framing the decision as a symbol of the monarchy's resistance to change. Social media platforms erupted with discussions and debates. On Twitter, hashtags like #JusticeForSussexes and #MonarchyOutOfTouch began trending within hours of the announcement. Celebrities, activists, and political figures weighed in, with many expressing support for Harry and Meghan's right to speak their truth without fear of reprisal. American public figures, including several prominent politicians, voiced their concerns about the implications of silencing dissent within a historical institution like the British monarchy. Some went as far as to suggest that the decision was indicative of a larger issue within the royal family, an inability to modernize and embrace diversity in its ranks. Despite the outpouring of support in the United States, there was also a noticeable shift in how the couple was perceived. While many sympathized with their plight, others questioned how the loss of their titles might impact their commercial ventures. Analysts speculated that deals with major media companies could be affected, given that much of Harry and Meghan's brand identity was tied to their royal status. Without the styling of Duke and Duchess, questions were raised about whether their star power would endure. Would audiences still flock to hear their stories without the allure of royalty? Would their foundation, Archewell, still command the same influence without the weight of royal titles behind it? Across the Commonwealth, reactions were varied. In countries like Canada and Australia, where the monarchy's influence is largely ceremonial, the decision sparked conversations about the relevance of royal titles in the modern age. Prominent political figures in both nations spoke openly about the need for reform within the Commonwealth, with some even suggesting that the time had come to consider their ties to the British crown. In Australia, the debate over republicanism was reignited, with political commentators pointing to the Sussex situation as evidence of the monarchy's outdated approach to governance and representation. Campaigns for Australian independence from the Crown saw a noticeable uptick in support, with public figures arguing that the decision to revoke the titles was emblematic of the monarchy's rigidity. In contrast, Caribbean nations, where the legacy of colonialism remains a sensitive subject, reacted with a mixture of indifference and quiet approval. Leaders in Jamaica and Barbados, both of which had been vocal about their intentions to distance themselves from the Crown, used the moment as a platform to discuss their future within the Commonwealth. In Barbados, which had recently transitioned to a republic, the decision was seen as further justification for severing ties with the monarchy. Politicians took to social media to express solidarity with Harry and Meghan, criticizing the decision as an act of suppression. The global response did not go unnoticed within the walls of Buckingham Palace. Reports emerged that King Charles and his advisors had anticipated the backlash but were resolute in their decision. Sources close to the royal family revealed that the king believed it was necessary to take a definitive stand, not just for the sake of tradition but for the survival of the institution itself. Allowing Harry and Meghan to continue using their titles while simultaneously criticizing the monarchy, in the king's view, was a contradiction that undermined the very foundation of royal authority. The British government, while largely silent on the matter, privately supported the decision. Political leaders were reportedly briefed on the announcement days before it was made public, ensuring that preparations were in place to manage any diplomatic fallout. Within Parliament, the reaction was mixed but largely supportive of the king's authority to act in defense of the monarchy's principles. A few dissenting voices raised concerns about the decision's long-term implications, questioning whether it would drive a deeper wedge between the monarchy and its younger generation of supporters. For Harry and Meghan, the global response was both a reflection of their influence and a testament to the divisions their story had created. While support poured in from American allies and progressive voices across the Commonwealth, it became increasingly clear that their bond with the British public had been irrevocably damaged. Analysts speculated that their future would now be firmly rooted in American soil, where their brand of advocacy and media influence would likely continue to flourish, albeit under a different banner. The royal decree, while legally binding and symbolically powerful, had also created ripples that stretched far beyond the United Kingdom. It reignited debates over monarchy, colonial legacy, and the relevance of titles in a modern world. For King Charles, the decision represented a definitive assertion of power. For Harry and Meghan, it marked the end of their royal journey and the beginning of an uncertain path forward. The news of King Charles's decree struck the Sussexes with the force of a tidal wave. For months, there had been whispers of impending action, rumors swirling around royal circles and echoed through the halls of the British press. But when the official announcement came, it was as final and unyielding as the stroke of the king's pen. For Harry and Meghan, it marked the definitive end of their formal connection to the British monarchy, a decision that would reverberate not just across the United Kingdom but around the world. Their immediate response was silence. For days after the announcement, there was no official statement, no social media posts, and no interviews. The absence of a reaction only fueled speculation. Commentators across the media spectrum dissected the silence, with some interpreting it as shock, others as careful calculation. Behind the walls of their Montecito mansion, it was said that Harry and Meghan were regrouping, consulting with their team of advisors and strategists to determine their next steps. When their response finally came, it was measured and composed. A statement released through their official spokesperson expressed disappointment but not surprise. While we are saddened by the decision, we respect the sovereignty of His Majesty King Charles and remain committed to our work and service, independent of any title or royal affiliation, the statement read. It was a carefully worded response, crafted to convey respect while subtly reinforcing their commitment to their independent ventures. But the public reaction to their statement was anything but subdued. Supporters of the Sussexes rallied online, expressing solidarity and frustration at what they perceived as an unjust punishment. Hashtags like #StandWithSussexes and #RoyalInjustice began trending on Twitter. Prominent American figures voiced their support, including celebrities and politicians who had openly backed Harry and Meghan during their departure from royal duties. Their support extended beyond mere words, with public declarations of commitment to the couple's charitable endeavors, particularly their work with Archewell. The couple's charitable foundation, Archewell, became the focal point of their next moves. Within days of the royal decree, Archewell announced a major expansion of its projects, including new initiatives focused on mental health, global education, and social justice. Their strategy was clear. Without the royal titles, their work would be driven by impact and community rather than royal obligation. In a live-streamed event just weeks after the announcement, Harry appeared on stage, speaking passionately about mental health awareness and the importance of global unity. His demeanor was calm, his speech measured, but there was a noticeable intensity in his eyes as he spoke. It was as if the royal decree had unshackled him from constraints, allowing him to speak with a new level of candor and purpose. Meghan, too, re-emerged into the public eye with a renewed focus. In her first interview after the decree, she spoke openly about the challenges of royal life, reflecting on the pressures of scrutiny and the importance of self-empowerment. The interview, conducted with an American news outlet, was both a reflection and a declaration of her intentions moving forward. "I am proud of what Harry and I have built, not because of titles or traditions, but because of the impact we want to have," she said, her voice steady and resolute. For many of their supporters, it was a moment of vindication, a sign that Harry and Meghan would not be silenced or diminished by the loss of their titles. Their response, however, did not come without criticism. In the United Kingdom, many saw their public appearances and media engagements as attempts to capitalize on their newfound freedom. Royal commentators accused the couple of leveraging their royal narrative to further their brand, even without the titles. Headlines questioned the authenticity of their charitable initiatives, suggesting that the expansion of Archewell was little more than a strategic move to maintain their relevance. Critics pointed out that while they no longer held royal titles, they still commanded the global attention that came with their former status, raising questions about their true intentions. Among the most vocal critics was Piers Morgan, the outspoken television host and journalist. In a series of televised segments and opinion columns, Morgan lambasted the couple for what he described as hypocrisy. "They don't want to be royal, but they want all the benefits of it," he said during a live broadcast. His words sparked fierce debate, with supporters and detractors clashing over the legitimacy of Harry and Meghan's actions. The British press, notorious for its unyielding coverage of the Sussexes, seized upon Morgan's commentary, running stories that framed Harry and Meghan as opportunists. The Sussexes, however, seemed unfazed by the backlash. Within weeks, they announced a new partnership with a global mental health initiative aimed at providing resources for underserved communities. Meghan was also seen attending women's advocacy events, speaking on panels about equality and empowerment. Their presence was met with enthusiastic crowds, particularly in the United States, where their narrative of independence resonated deeply with audiences. For many, Harry and Meghan symbolized a break from tradition, a path forward that embraced modernity over monarchy. The couple's renewed public presence also fueled speculation about their future. American political commentators began to question whether Meghan would use her platform to pivot into politics. Her advocacy work, combined with her outspoken nature, positioned her as a vocal advocate for women's rights and social justice. When asked about her political ambitions during an interview, Meghan responded with a smile, neither confirming nor denying the possibility. "I'm focused on the work at hand," she replied, leaving the door open to interpretation. Meanwhile, Harry's focus appeared to remain on global advocacy and mental health. His ongoing work with veterans and his continued involvement with Invictus Games showcased his commitment to service, even without the formal backing of the monarchy. Friends of Harry suggested that the loss of his title had only deepened his resolve to make a difference on his own terms. One close friend, speaking anonymously to the press, remarked that Harry had never seemed more at peace with his choices. The reaction from the palace was predictably restrained. Buckingham Palace released no further statements regarding the Sussexes, maintaining a policy of silence on their activities. However, sources close to the royal family suggested that King Charles had been briefed on Harry and Meghan's public engagements, and while not officially acknowledged, there was a clear sense of monitoring. Reports emerged that palace aides had been tasked with observing the couple's media activities to ensure that they did not leverage their former titles in any capacity. It was a subtle reminder that while they were free to pursue their endeavors, they remained under scrutiny from the institution they had left behind. Their newfound independence, however, came with challenges. Invitations to certain high-profile British events were noticeably absent. State functions, royal ceremonies, and even certain charitable galas traditionally attended by members of the royal family were no longer part of Harry and Meghan's itinerary. The divide was stark, a clear line drawn between the royal family and the couple who had once walked amongst them. For many in the British public, it was a sign of finality, an acknowledgement that Harry and Meghan were truly on their own. Yet, for the Sussexes, the loss of their titles appeared to have unlocked a new era of opportunity. Free from royal restrictions, they expanded their media presence, secured additional partnerships, and broadened their charitable reach. Their narrative of independence and self-determination resonated deeply with their supporters, fueling a new chapter in their story, one defined not by royal obligation, but by personal conviction. Inside the walls of Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere was tense yet resolute. King Charles had made his decision, and there would be no turning back. The royal decree, signed and sealed, was a statement of authority and a reassertion of the monarchy's enduring power. For those within the royal family, the decision to strip Harry and Meghan of their titles was not merely a matter of protocol, it was a declaration of principle. The monarchy, as it had stood for centuries, would not be undermined by those who walked away from its duties while still clinging to its privileges. The Queen's passing had marked the beginning of a new era, and King Charles, long prepared for the throne, was determined to lead with a firm hand. His ascension had brought with it a wave of expectations, modernization, streamlining, and a restoration of royal dignity. Among his first challenges was the issue of the Sussexes, whose departure had left a stain on the reputation of the monarchy. Many within the institution viewed their media ventures as a direct affront to royal tradition. Documentaries, interviews, and tell-all books had brought the royal family into the glare of international scrutiny, airing grievances that were historically kept behind palace walls. For King Charles, this was unacceptable. The decision to strip the Sussexes of their titles was discussed at length with senior advisors and family members. Prince William, now the Prince of Wales, was reportedly a key voice in the discussions. His relationship with his brother had been strained for years, marked by tension and disagreements over the Sussexes' approach to royal life. William, who had spent his entire life preparing to one day be king, understood the necessity of upholding the dignity of the crown. Sources close to the royal family described him as deeply supportive of his father's decision, viewing it as a necessary step to preserve the institution's integrity. Princess Anne was a vocal supporter of the move. Known for her no-nonsense approach to royal duties, and had always been a staunch defender of the monarchy's traditions. To her, the concept of duty was paramount. Titles were not accessories but responsibilities. Those who did not uphold their responsibilities had no place in the line of succession, nor in the public representation of the crown. She reportedly expressed her support during several private meetings, emphasizing the importance of setting a precedent that titles are earned through service, not inherited through name alone. The royal family, in a rare display of unity, stood behind King Charles. Public appearances during this time were marked by a noticeable cohesion. The king, flanked by senior royals, attended state functions and charitable events with a renewed sense of purpose. Public opinion, which had wavered during the tumultuous months following Harry and Meghan's departure, began to stabilize. Polls indicated a resurgence of support for the monarchy's decision, with many British citizens expressing approval of King Charles's firm stance. The narrative from Buckingham Palace was clear and consistent. The monarchy would endure, unswayed by personal grievances and undeterred by external pressures. The move also sent a powerful message to the rest of the royal family. For years, there had been whispers of modernization, of loosening the rigid structures that defined royal life. But King Charles's decree demonstrated that while change was welcome, rebellion would not be tolerated. It served as a stark reminder that titles bestowed by the crown were privileges, not entitlements. Those who wished to break from royal duties would not be permitted to carry the prestige of those titles with them into the private sector. It was a declaration of boundaries, one that redefined the expectations of those who carried royal titles moving forward. The ripple effects of this decision began to manifest almost immediately. Within weeks, discussions emerged around the future of the monarchy and its structure. King Charles, long an advocate for a streamlined royal family, began initiating conversations about reducing the number of working royals. His vision was one of efficiency and purpose, a monarchy that was smaller, more focused, and less burdened by peripheral titles. Under this new structure, only those directly in the line of succession and actively engaged in royal duties would retain their titles and associated privileges. This meant that distant relatives, long accustomed to the benefits of their status, would be reevaluated. The implications of this were far-reaching. Members of the extended royal family who had once enjoyed the benefits of their titles without the responsibilities were now facing uncertainty. Private discussions among royal aides suggested that King Charles was considering a complete overhaul of how titles were distributed and maintained. The model he looked to was that of the Scandinavian monarchies, slimmer, more agile, and less reliant on public funding. In Sweden and Denmark, for example, royal titles are reserved exclusively for those who actively contribute to royal duties. King Charles's vision seemed to align with this approach, signaling a dramatic shift in the British monarchy structure. This potential shift also sparked debates within Parliament. Some MPs voiced their support for the King's vision, suggesting that a streamlined monarchy would be more in line with modern democratic values. Critics, however, warned that such changes could undermine the monarchy's influence and connection to the people. They argued that reducing the number of royals could create a perception of elitism, disconnecting the monarchy from the wider public. Nonetheless, King Charles appeared resolute in his mission to modernize the institution, believing that a smaller, more focused royal family would better represent British values in the 21st century. Abroad, the reaction was mixed. In Commonwealth nations, the decision sparked discussions about the future of the monarchy's presence in their own political structures. Countries like Australia and Canada, where republican movements have long simmered beneath the surface, saw renewed calls for independence from the British crown. Activists argued that the monarchy's actions were indicative of a broader unwillingness to modernize, while supporters of the crown maintained that the decision was a necessary defense of tradition. Within the palace, preparations were already underway for the next steps. Royal aides began drafting plans for the reorganization of royal duties, ensuring that those who remained under the royal banner would be more visible and engaged with public service. The narrative that emerged was one of unity and strength. Public appearances by Prince William and Princess Catherine were strategically increased.